Alright, so today I'm making a video about The Spook Who Sat by the Door by Sam Greenlee. Now, this is a very deep book. I couldn't cover all the different aspects of it and all the characters and all the different nuances and how it connects to today's culture. I didn't have a lot of time to do all that. The script was getting way too long. I was getting way too irritated. I was like, I'm just going to cut it to where you can get the main gist of the book, get some of the context of it, the main themes, and then in the future, if you guys want that, I'll do a video about the different characters and different themes and going more into depth about different things. But for now, I'm just gonna do a slight little overview about the main, idea about everything. So, this book was originally published in 1969. I'm gonna try to insert some clips. I got to give some background about why Sam Greenlee made the book, wrote the book, and kind of what he was trying to achieve with the book.
A long time thinking about doing it. Okay, I came back to the States for a brief time during the summer of 1965, and that's when the Watson Rebellion jumped off. And I knew this was just the first of a number to follow. And I was offered a job as a roving street gang worker, and I knew that because of my military background, I could do what I wrote about. And after having thought about it for a long time, I decided that my skills as a propagandist exceeded my military skills. So I decided to write it so the people I knew would do it right. Now, because it was published so late, a lot of people assumed that I was writing out of the headlines. In effect, I was anticipating and prophesying what was going down. And if it had been published in '67, a lot of black people might still be alive now.
Now, I want to give some context to kind of like the era that it came up in, the 60s. If you don't know much about the 60s as far as how it pertains to African Americans, it was a very turbulent time for us. There's still a lot of controversy surrounding that time period because of how different people are portrayed. They're not really telling the truth about how the public really felt about a lot of people during the civil rights movement. These people were not really celebrated or loved. They were very hated during their time. Of course now they're seen as, trailblazers and visionaries and stuff, but that wasn't always the case. But the Chicago 7 trial, which that's a whole separate video, but to give a slight introduction to it, it was 7 people that were charged, and what they were charged by the federal government with several accusations that included conspiracy and crossing state lines to incite riots. So a lot of different things happened in this trial, but it was very controversial. A year before that, on April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated at the Lorraine Motel, Memphis, Tennessee. On February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated. On November 22nd, 1963, John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was assassinated. And in another incident that plays a role in this book. A lot of people probably didn't catch it, but in 1967 there was an internal investigation that forced 3 officers to promptly quit, and the city police board soon fired another 3 officers linked to the KKK. There were highly publicized board hearings to shed light on the inner workings of the department's secretive. I can't pronounce this word. I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, but just to give some context, and that happened in Chicago, where this book, takes place around the same time. So just wanted to throw that in there to get kind of some context about why everything seems so tense and so racially, I can't think of the word, my goodness, charged. Things this are racially charged. Now, the things I want to go over And I think it's very important to get these things out the way. Things of racism, obviously. Integration is a big subject in this book. Assimilation is another argument in this book. Stereotypes, we get to go into the different depths of how black people perceive themselves, how the effects of certain things have on black communities, how the public views of black communities, how the media plays a part in how a lot of the different facts and information is given to the public and versus what really happened in the community by the people that live there. Hopelessness is another theme in this movie. Oh my goodness. I'm not covering the movie, my bad. I'm about to cut that out. But things of hopelessness, classism, and denial are some more things that I kind of seen that were more prevalent. Now, I want to say about this book, there is some 20th century misogyny in this book and sexism. It's not really a point a lot of people really go into depth when it comes to the Black Power, whole era, and even the civil rights. They were not really promoting a whole bunch of women and giving them a lot of light and a lot of attention, especially when it came to certain issues more dedicated towards women. They're not really highlighting that. So, because one of the characters named Joy, who is quote unquote supposed to be like a partner to the main character Dan Freeman. I'm not gonna give too much because it's a very complex relationship they have. But at one point in the movie, she's basically a prostitute, and I don't know why Sam Greenlee made her a prostitute. Maybe I'm not seeing something, but from my point of view, it seems like the main character is kind of like a playboy. He just kind of gets his way with women. There's never any pushback. Nobody's ever came to him and said, the way you treat women or the way you see women. And it does add a slight. He does treat this specific prostitute better, like a quote unquote queen and stuff like that. But at the same time, why does she have to be a prostitute? Why can't she just be a normal mom? Or why can't she just be a normal college going girl? Why does she have to be a prostitute? I don't know why women in our community have to be seen as, in these quote unquote demeaning, occupations. I really don't get it, but that's my only gripe about it. Is that it's just a little sexist, and misogynistic. I don't like that. But outside of that, when it comes to, when it comes to more deeper things, like I said, with integration and assimilation, is kind of like a back and forth. Because one of the different characters, I won't go into a whole bunch, but one of his best friends that he grew up with plays kind of like a Batman and Joker type relationship where one is on the opposite side of the law and then another person is quote unquote with the side of the law. They're trying to quote unquote find their way in the system and kind of get what they can and things of that nature. But on the opposite hand, you see Dan, who's more pushing back against the system and says that we need to basically reset it, basically destroy it and build it back up from the ground up. And it's a very complex book. It really depends on the things you've been through in your life, how you can interpret different characters and different things that happen in this book. I don't want to spoil the whole thing too, because there are a lot of different I would say important plot points in the book that a lot of people probably don't exactly see. And the book is old, but a lot of people haven't heard of this book. So there was a lot of racism. There is a lot of detail, especially towards the beginning of the book. It is a slow burn when it comes to pacing, not gonna lie to you. From, I would say, chapter 1 to about chapter 10, it might drive you away depending on how you like details. Because towards the beginning, for those that don't know, this book is primarily about a black man infiltrating the CIA. Okay, so it's already starting off with a very, kind of on the nose message that can kind of rub some people the wrong way. and this book did face a lot of controversy during the time. Even the movie, it has its own separate critiques and different things, and that was, I would say, the book wasn't really as hard, according to Sam Greenlee, when it came to making the movie compared to the book. So I might make a whole separate video about the movie itself, but as far as the book goes, um, I don't want to say too much, but that is really all I want to highlight. I just want to highlight the main themes of the book, some of the characters that kind of play a major role in it. I didn't want to talk about the ending or even the latter acts of the movie. I keep saying the movie of the book itself. Due to the kind of the dramatic shift it takes, because it does take a major shift when it comes to talking about more complex subjects. I really want to highlight the fact that I like the fact that this book does not shy away from kind of talking and critiquing white people when it comes to how they see African Americans, and how kind of the warped, even the ones that quote unquote say that they're not racist, even some of the stereotypes that they might have ingrained in their memory from whatever media or, you know, that they got their information from, or even other people. It takes into account how, even on both ends, how us as African Americans, how we kind of wear a mask sometimes when we talk and be around other white folks, and even some of the internal struggles of black folk when it comes to how black people raised in poverty and black people that are raised in more of a middle class setting have different outlooks on life, and how they view different individuals based on where they come from and how much money they make and who their parents are. So there are some things that I don't really want to reveal. I want to let the reader interpret it. Especially since I feel like that's what he intended with this book. He wanted you to really get a sense of pride about yourself and that you can do something. Because I think the sense of community nowadays is a little more different than the sense of community back then. You know, I feel like black folks were kind of all placed in a singular area, so they kind of didn't have a choice but to stick to each other. But nowadays it's a lot more different. Black people are more able to move into different, places that they weren't able to move into back then. So how we view each other now is a little bit different, but not too far that it doesn't hit the same notes that this book highlights when it comes to, different things along that nature. I'm gonna try to include some examples, and I might add some more to this, but at the same time, I don't want to reveal too much, like I said. But yeah, and then another character that I really want to talk about is really towards the end of the book, which I might do a whole separate video about, kind of the later acts when it comes to how Dan Freeman, when he goes back to Chicago towards the later half of the book, and how he kind of starts putting his plan, because at the beginning of the book we never are told exactly what Dan is trying to do with all this information, but we're alluded to the fact that there is a agenda that we're not aware of, that Dan is planning to do with all this information that he's gathering about the CIA, about their, the inner workings of the organization, basically. So it's an exciting book too. There are some pretty tense moments. There's a lot of character development when it comes to other characters. Not so much with the main character, as he's kind of, I felt like he's used as a vehicle to drive the plot home, and if he changed or kind of varied in his quote unquote ideology, I feel like it would defeat the point of the book, since the point is already kind of very ham-fisted. So I just really encourage people to take into account the era that this book was written in, and kind of take it with a grain of salt when it comes to, like I said, as far as how women are depicted in this book, how kids are depicted in this book, how other races are depicted in this book, you have to take it into account the era that it was written in. Like I said, the 60s, even the early 70s. There was a lot of racial tension between you know, different races in America. But can be like, this is not what he said it was going to be. There's a lot of action. There is some violence. There is some pretty hard topics, to tackle and talk about. But I think Sam Greenlee really made a good impression when he wrote this book. He wrote it in a way that you can really get a sense that you're Sam, not Sam. I keep saying Sam and Dan Freeman. That you are Dan Freeman. You get to see a look at how he thinks, how he backtracks on certain ideas, and how he really is always keeping his plan at the forefront and never swaying from that. He never tries to quote unquote change as far as what his mission is. In fact, I think at some points in the book, he constantly is reminding himself that he cannot blow his cover, that he can't, you know, because at one point between the character Joy and Dan Freeman, they quote unquote split because he leaves DC because that's where the CIA job is. He leaves DC, and there's a moment where Joy is basically telling him that, and that's where the integration versus assimilation argument comes in, or where Joy wants to settle down with a family. Dan already has a good job. She wants to basically have kids now, and basically, just settle down and get out of this lifestyle of, sex work and whatnot. Dan, on the other hand, still feels a deep sense of, he feels deeply about, African Americans and their role in society, and how he wants to dismantle that and kind of give them a more, I don't know. And then that too, Sam never shows what the actual result of everything that this book builds up to. It's never alluded to exactly what they want to achieve. They just kind of start something. Maybe that's the point, is that before we can even get to the later parts of the mission at hand, we need to just get started first. I'm not really sure. There are some riots. There are critique of the police. So there are a lot of things that this book does talk about. But in that same note, it does critique how black people see each other and drug use too. I almost forgot to mention that. Of course, it's drug use. It critiques. This is before the 80s. So take that into account. It doesn't talk about drugs in the sense that we talk about drugs, because I think before this, the 80s, it wasn't exactly as big as it is now when it comes to how it affects different minorities and different races of people. But I'm not going to talk about it too much. Go check out this book, The Spook Who Sat by the Door by Sam Greenlee. Go check it out. And like I said, I'll make a deeper video in the future if you guys want that. I'm going to